Hello, hello. Welcome everybody. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to this live talk, healing talk on shame and guilt. Today I'll be in conversation with Amari Dior from Body Armor Wellness. She's a chronic pain management. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pierre-Etienne Vanier. I'm a mind-body practitioner specialized in nervous system regulation and trauma recovery. And today we're going to go deeper into this conversation. I've had a few conversations this week with clients who are noticing the symptoms and the issues, but we're kind of like reluctant to diving a little deeper. And so let me welcome Amari here. Let's start that conversation. And if you're ready, and if you're here, take a moment, take a breath. And here she is. Hi, Amari.
Good morning from over here. Good evening over there.
Yes, good morning to you. Good evening to me as the minarets of Cairo are calling for prayer here. It's good to start. It's always a nice moment, a nice reminder here to recenter and to be present. How have you been? It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been a couple of weeks. I'm great. We just came back from vacation last night, and it was really nice to just get a breather and relax and enjoy ourselves. I'm good. How about you?
Doing well, doing well. Lots going on lately. But yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's good to be here in conversation, and we're gonna talk about here a topic that's been coming up every now and then because it is an important topic, which is healing shame and guilt.
Right.
And here, healing shame and guilt. I mean, I get a sense that that's probably going to be a several part conversation because that's a big topic.
Right.
But as always, invitation to you, to me, to anybody watching us live or watching this replay to just take a breath here. To just be here and maybe even to reflect on, when I hear these words, shame, guilt, what comes up? All right.
Exactly.
That may be a good starting point, because I know when you suggested that topic, I was like, yeah, that is a juicy topic. As a practitioner, as a person on that path of healing, I'm like, yeah, guilt and shame are definitely things that will or on the way on that path, and they serve a purpose, and we're going to discuss that in a few moments. And so why don't we start there? Maybe with what comes up for you and what comes up for me here when we talk of shame and guilt, without going into the concepts and what it is and what it's not. We'll do this, but for you
Yeah.
personally, Amari, what do these words bring up?
Thank you, Pierre. Yeah, and hello, everyone. So with shame and guilt, and I know we talked about, this came up from our live 3 weeks ago. And I want to go to a place where this shame and guilt relates to chronic pain and my experience with chronic pain. And so I'll start with shame first, which is having experienced shame because my body is broken or not functioning the way that it used to or that I would like to, and being different than anyone else in my life, changing and having that shame that although I look great on the outside, I look healthy on the outside, I have this inner struggle with my own body, and that created shame. Not being able to control it, not being able to get better, not being able to be my have my divine given right to heal myself as God has made me. And so that created shame in itself. Shame that I'm not the picture I would paint is by being broken and having chronic back pain, I'm not 100%. And then I wasn't showing up in my life as 100%. So I was discounting myself because of something, because of the shame. And then um, with guilt and chronic pain, and these are the reasons why I have become a chronic pain coach, is because there's a lot of guilt when it comes down to chronic pain and experiencing chronic pain and experiencing life with chronic pain, having guilt that I can't do things that I used to do, or I have to ask for help, or the financial instability that it had caused, or the emotional, I was very emotional when it came down to dealing with my chronic pain and feeling like I was up against the wall, and being more short-winded when it came down to certain conversations, because I was being constantly triggered. My nervous system was constantly triggered. I had this chronic stress, which is a form of chronic pain, that was causing me to feel alert and not connected and up against the wall and not supported and not loved. And yeah, so that guilt of being that person to other people that I love, and also to being that person and how I showed up in the world while trying to deal with chronic pain at the time, was really, really hard for me. And I find that it's really hard for my clients too. And these are one of the things that we first focus on when it comes down to coaching. So yeah, thank you for letting me share.
No, thank you for sharing. What I'm hearing here and what resonated the most with me is, when you were like, oh, there's some shame because I'm not able to fill the blank.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting, because for me, when you first suggested that topic, what came up, it was almost like an inner child activation. It was like a, ooh, let's there's guilt, there's shame, and somehow, somewhere in my mind and in my psyche, there's kind of a childish nature for these emotions, for these experiences. And then I took a step back and I was like, wow, let's look at culture. I mean, I grew up in France, which is, and I feel to a certain extent, the US is not much different. It's really a culture of scarcity, culture of like you have to do things, you have to perform, so let me bring it home, right? I grew up witnessing that if you want to be a man, you have to get up at 5 a.m. and you have to come back at 12 p.m. and you have to fill the blanks, right? Like, you have to do all these things, you have to perform, you have to live an extraordinary life. And if you live an ordinary life, that's kind of a meaningless life. And I felt like that sense is even stronger in the US. And I would add, it's even worse since social media, where living an ordinary life is like, no, you need to look at all the pictures of all the achievements that you've all the things you've done, and all the places you've been, and all the amazing moments of your life. And there's a sense of like, I have to show, right, that I'm extraordinary. And that's a big problem, because many of us wake up in the mornings feeling like, oh, I haven't slept enough, I'm exhausted, and going at night in bed feeling like, oh, all the things I haven't done.
Yeah.
And that's a problem, because then that fuels, I think, that the idea that I am not, fill the blank, enough.
Right.
I'm not productive enough, I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not friendly enough, I'm not fun enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so on and so forth. And so here, what I find really interesting in that conversation between shame and guilt is the understanding that shame, it's about who I am. It's about the self.
Right.
When guilt really is more about what I do, it's about the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so when reflecting here, and Dr. Brené Brown, right, on her work with vulnerability and shame, and she has some amazing material on that, reminds us that really that for guilt, like I made a mistake. For
Right.
shame, it's I am a mistake.
Yeah. Ooh.
Oh, right. And so let's
Right.
take a moment here to even get a sense of like how that lands in your body, right? With just your facial expression. And the same for me. If I say I made a mistake, there's an opportunity for learning here. There's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to acknowledge that, hey, this needs to change. And
Right.
it's really interesting when you look at research that actually guilt can be a catalyst for behavior change.
Yeah.
Shame is not.
Right.
Right? Shaming myself for whether it's addictions, what I eat, what I smoke, what I this, what I that, has never helped. I've worked for years in addiction treatment centers. Shame doesn't work, right?
Right.
But if I am the mistake, then typically it's gonna drag me down
Right.
deeper. But if I realize that I made a mistake, then I have an opportunity to say, this is not a behavior that's aligned with my values, with my life, with
Exactly.
my intention, right? And so here it's really interesting because that idea then it comes back to the inner child for me, right? That I grew up at times not being reminded that I made a mistake, but being reminded that I was a mistake here. And I'm saying that with because of because of the culture, because of the I still see it today in French schools. My kids are in French school, and I'm like, what the heck is this? Like what, and many cultures I think are guilty of that, pun on word intended, of like instead of telling the kids why you shouldn't do this, they're like,
Why are you
why
like
are you
this?
being like this? What's wrong? A remark that was made to my 11-year-old daughter the other day. What's wrong with you?
Mm.
Right? Instead of saying,
Right.
why did you do this? These are two very different questions. Why did you
Mm-hmm.
do this? And what's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
And so just to stay and just to finish here on this idea that we need to understand that shame, as I mentioned earlier, there's zero evidence that shame is helpful for us to move on and to change our behavior, right? It's
Exactly.
much more likely if I have again, if my kid is being shamed at school,
Right.
it's quite unlikely that I may hear it.
Right.
But if my kid knows of his or her self-worth, that their sense of worthiness is not on the table, is not in question,
Right.
and he's being told, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Right? They're much more able to make the most out of that reflection, and whether it's warranted or not, right? They maybe
Right.
say, hey, this wasn't fair,
Yeah.
right? Why are you doing this? But if my sense of worthiness is not something that is strong in me, then then I will internalize that question of like, hey, what's wrong with me? Yeah, love is. Yeah, I'm not blah 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 enough. I'm not
Yeah.
disciplined enough. I'm not good enough, and so on and so
Yeah.
on. Am I making sense here?
It makes total sense. And I love the way that you broke it down because, yes, shame does reflect who we believe that we are, and the guilt is the actions that we have towards that create this guilt. And with a lot of times, just with my clients, the biggest thing that I see is we have to move forward from the shame
Mm,
because and it's the first question that I ask is what are the three biggest frustrations that you have with chronic pain? It's the first thing I ask. And this is a question that I can ask that either the person is going to reflect shame about chronic pain, or they're going to reflect guilt about not being able to do certain things with chronic pain. And these two, and with this question, I'm able to see, okay, we need to work on self-love. We need to work on mending the nervous system and helping you understand what these words that you have chosen means. Or we just need to come up with a plan so you can identify your triggers so you can move forward, but you know who you are. And so the two, like that question is so relevant to my clients because it helps me understand, are you experiencing this pain? Is your nervous system being triggered to present pain and feel threatened and feel like it's constantly being attacked, or that you've gone from this mindset of from victor to victim because of chronic pain? All right, now we need to start looking within. Now we need to start looking back at all of those values that you have and what those core values, what brings you happiness, what you truly believe that you are, and get back in touch with that self-love. That's shame. That we have to heal that shame. But guilt is another story. That's something we can do something about it, change a couple of actions, and then the person feels more aligned. That word alignment that we always use feels more aligned with that mind, body, soul connection, feels like they are acting within their means and what serves their soul. So I'm so glad that you made that difference and explanation between the two. Thank you.
Thank you. And coming back here to that concept of self-love, which again is so important, because when we talk about love and self-love, or what is being loved, I mean, that's another, that's another five episodes here. But here, when we talk about the ability, for me, being loved is the opportunity for me to show up as my authentic self,
Right.
as my most vulnerable, authentic self, not trying to fake the funk, not trying to pretend that I'm okay. And that's what also breaks my heart at times, because I see so many people, and understandably, dealing with chronic pain, and I'll include myself in that at times, when when I'm in pain, sometimes I'm going to pretend I'm not, because I want to fit in, I want to belong, I don't want to be a burden. And I must say, this is really some self-imposed, again, shame of like, well,
Yeah.
I'm not resilient enough, I'm not strong enough, right? And like, and I drag myself down. And
Yeah.
I see so many clients doing the same, as in like, well, the kids are visiting, fat friends are visiting, I'm gonna put the facade, and push through. And then I wonder, I'm like, but then am I really being honest? Like, if a friend of mine was going through a struggle, I would want to be here for him or her, right? And yet, oftentimes I hear, well, I don't want to be a burden to others, and this is so sad, because then we try to fit in, we try to belong. And I think it's Gabor Mate who said, right, between belonging and authenticity, we'll choose belonging most of the time. We'll pretend because we need to belong. We feel like we need to belong. But being authentic is so much more difficult. It's so much more difficult to be honest and to show up in my most vulnerable self with all my with my pain.
Yeah.
Even though that's paradoxically how also it can create the deepest connections. For me, the people who've seen me in pain, right? We've built a different relationship. When I remember seeing, brothers like doing the work and really going back to that shame, to all these inner child wounds. And for me to be able to witness that created the bond that was beyond words, right? And so here it's so important, I think, for us to understand that, yes, I want to belong, but want to belong in my honest, in with my honest self. I want to be, I'd like to be me, right? And that sense of self-love, I think, is something that that needs to be nurtured. It's not something that you're born with or not born with. It's not something that you have or you don't have. It's a practice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a practice. As somebody who's, attending a couple of healing circles and men's circles and talk circles and like per week, that's a practice, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier than other days. Sometimes I will pretend that I'm okay because you know what? I don't have the strength to go a little deeper. But also maybe sometimes I feel like I don't think the people were there or willing to hear when I'm being asked, hey, how are you? Well, are you ready for the answer? Right? Or not? Or you just like, is this just like chit chat and then we're gonna go into politics. So here when we talk about medicine, I do think that self-love, medicine for that shame, is self-love is one, that sense of belonging, the safe spaces that we've talked about are important or crucial. Um, and there's one mantra, again, going back to Dr. Brown,
Tell me.
that comes back to me. That's like one of her mantras is like, I don't, when she finds herself in a challenging situation where she might be, on the offensive, or she notices herself defensive, or what she says to herself, and that stuck with me, which is like, don't puff up, don't shrink, stay in your sacred ground.
That's
Don't
beautiful.
puff up, don't shrink, stay in your sacred ground. And that's such a beautiful mantra. That's such a beautiful reminder, at least for me, because oftentimes I will notice myself trying to, oh, by the way, I'm certified from this and I studied this, and what is it? Like, I'm just, it's my insecurity speaking. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I'm gonna shrink, right? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
noticing that shame that kicks in. But if I'm able to remind myself to not puff up, to not shrink, to just stay in my sacred ground, there I have an opportunity for authenticity,
Right. Exactly.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. And something that going back to what you said as far as feeling like a burden and dealing with chronic pain and pain management, and I know you work with people that deal with illnesses, chronic illnesses. And I just want to ask, like, when we say we are a burden, what are we truly saying about ourselves and the belief that we have about ourselves? We are
Mhm.
too much of a burden for other people that we believe that we have put in a certain category that love us. And so this is one of the things that I like to really dive deep into, and that I had to dive deep in for my own chronic pain journey. And now as a coach, is what are you saying to yourself when you say you are a burden? What does that truly mean? Does that signify that you love yourself? Does that signify that maybe you're not worthy enough? Do you believe that you're not worthy enough to be loved when you're not your best self? And so these questions, I ask these questions and I really dive into it, because what does this truly mean for your healing journey? What does it truly mean for our ability to cope when we feel like a burden, when we feel like we can't be our authentic self? What does that do to our nervous system and our subconscious mind? And what it does is it teaches us, oh, there's something wrong with me. And that something that I think is wrong with me is not worthy enough for me to be my true self. And if I act as my true self, then there will be repercussions. I might not be loved. I might not have the support that I need to still push through the next day when I am being my authentic self and truly in pain. And then what is that teaching our nervous system? Is that teaching our nervous system that, hey, like, I I don't feel safe when I'm authentic. I don't feel safe when I feel like I'm going to be yelled at, or I'm going to be shunned, or I'm going to be judged, or I might lose my livelihood, like my job, or whatever it might be, if I'm true about this pain. And then that creates this sense of being this pain trigger. That creates a neurological pain trigger that it teaches our mind. Our mind is like plastic. It has neuroplasticity. It teaches us subconsciously before we start doing actions that this might cause me more pain, whether it's mentally, physically, or emotionally. If I am my authentic self to these people that I love, these people that I need, these people that I don't think that I'm worthy for right now, then this could cause me some type of human pain. And then when we try to indulge after so many times of thinking this and training our brains and going into this shame and shrinking, as you said, then what happens is we create a pain trigger when we start thinking, oh, maybe I'm gonna try to be authentic today and just I can't be fake. I'm just gonna tell them that I'm in pain. But all of these coping mechanisms that we've used for 4 years or 20 years, I have clients that have been in pain for 10 years. For 10 years, telling ourselves that we're not worthy, we're not shameful. Then all of a sudden our nervous system's like, no, it's not safe to do that. And we rise into fight or flight. And we feel all these different pain triggers and we feel flared up. And it's a negative cycle. It really is. It's a really dangerous slope to put ourselves in. And that's why the medicine, as you called it, is the self-love when it comes down to shame. Because if we teach our mind and our body and our soul that, oh, we're not worthy enough to be truthful about who we are, then what does that teach us in the end if we keep doing that over and over and over again, you know?
Well, thank you for reminding us of this vicious circle of like shame and denial and then shutting down and further shutting down that creates more tension and rigidity and pain and we talking and here I'm talking about physical and emotional pain and again to put things into when you look at your nervous system, at our nervous system, shame is often a symptom of a nervous system that is overwhelmed, that is not healed, that hasn't had a chance to heal. Right? Shame, and here that's an important point for us to remember, that is something that typically if I find myself overwhelmed in that state of freeze, then that's when I'm going to question if, when I'm going to ask, am I lovable?
Right.
Am I worthy?
Right.
And I see that so often. I've seen that in me. I see that in clients. And I think when we take a step back and we're like, oh, this thinking, these thoughts, these doubts about my own sense of worthiness, are really just a symptom that I'm moving further and further away from my authentic self. Because what I want to remind you, myself, and everybody is that I am lovable regardless. You are lovable regardless. That me showing up as my imperfect, authentic self is the best thing, the best gift I can give to myself, the best gift I can give to the people around me. And it gets messy. And when we talk about showing up authentically, this is scary AF for me, for a lot of people. This is a scary practice. I want to acknowledge it. And yet I do want to say that this is probably the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself. Keeping that shame in the dark and in silence, it will fester.
Yeah.
In your emotional body, in your physical body. It's just going to make it worse. When I have clients who come to me and are like, "Oh, I'm in pain, but it's okay, it's all good."
Right.
And I'm like, "Can we take a moment to be honest here and just to acknowledge what's happening?"
Yeah.
Right? And even a couple of days ago, yesterday, a client was like, "Oh no, but if I connect, it's scary." And I was like, "Yes, I know. Let's go there. That's why we're here together." Not so that you can just push through, yeah, great. So that you can just acknowledge that, hey, I'm scared. I'm scared and I'm human. And that's the first step for your nervous system to say, thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for acknowledging that. Thank you for acknowledging what I'm going through right now. And thank
Right.
you for giving me an opportunity to align, right? For my mind, my body, and my spirit to say, like, right now I'm in fear and and I need support.
Yeah.
And from the moment that I say that, and even as I say it in my body, I'm like, there's a sense of like, okay. And I want to acknowledge that, you know, not everybody has that support. And we had that conversation before around the importance of finding spaces where we can practice showing up authentically.
Right.
But I do feel like that's a fantastic thing, because that can be a place where I'm enough, regardless of how I show up, right? And I'm not going to be challenged as to, like, one of the questions that I would get asked also, and that stuck with me when I was a kid, is like, who do you think you are?
Mm.
Do something and make me. And with a also with a little bit of shame, I must say, I find myself a couple of times in the past, a
Yeah.
few years ago, actually throwing that sentence at my kids. And then I was like, what am I doing here? Right? What am I doing? There was a sense of like, I'm gonna crush, I'm gonna crush that spirit. But then
Yeah.
what am I doing? I'm questioning that their worthiness. I'm saying,
Right.
not what you're doing right now. It's who you being. That's
Mm.
wrong. And so here, invitation and reminder for everybody as we near the end of that conversation here, that I am good enough. You are good enough. We're enough. And we're divine. And
Right.
when we take a moment to acknowledge how magnificent we are in our authentic, imperfect self, then miracles happen. That's when the body says, okay, let me take it from there. That's oftentimes when people will say, oh, thank you for sharing. Thank you for, you know, being here. Is there anything I can do?
Yeah.
Right? Vulnerability is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That was a great way to end this series, and I feel like we could do a spin-off of this in some way, and we'll definitely let the audience know what next week's topic is. Um, shall we say our closing words?
Let's close it here.
Okay, let's do it. So, my name is Amari. You can find me at Body and More Wellness. We are also here on Healing Studio Online, Instagram, every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Right now, until the end of the month, I am doing free 45-minute clarity calls. This is a call to help you identify your biggest frustrations with managing chronic pain and how we can get you moving forward in a more proactive and holistic approach. If you want to schedule a free call with me, you just go to my Instagram, Body and More Wellness, tap the link in my bio, and you'll see free clarity call right there. You can see my schedule and get on in with this great deal for chronic pain warriors.
Thank you, Amari. And for those of you searching for also more safe spaces to show up as your authentic self, more specifically, if you are a loved one or dealing with cancer, just go to the Healing Studio online schedule of events. This week alone, tonight actually, Pacific time, we'll have a community gathering online for people dealing with a cancer diagnosis. I'm also starting next week, I'm also starting a 6-week meditation program for people dealing with cancer. We also have like men's circles. We have a whole bunch of things going on. So in closing, I want to say, you know, that I'm enough. I'm worthy of love. So are you. If you're watching this video, there's no coincidence here. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. And I hope to see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Pierre.